Welcome to the third video in Iowa Homeland Security and Emergency Management's videos about your rights and responsibilities as an applicant for public assistance funding. This video discusses the documents and data needed to justify and receive reimbursement for the expenses caused by a disaster. Document, document, document. You'll hear it too often. But why is it so important for public assistance grants? Grant amounts are based on the scope of work for each project, which must be supported by the documentation. Both the damage and work to repair the pre-disaster condition have to be documented, so it's needed both in writing up projects and in closing them out. These documents will be necessary in the event of an audit, too. Audits might even ask for documents that FEMA didn't require when the project was written, but which may ultimately be necessary to justify the costs. The documentation can also help with your own budget projections or for estimating costs or damages in future events. If something falls outside the scope of work, ask yourself, can I complete the scope of work as written, or do I need to modify it? Be forewarned, expenses incurred outside the scope of work are not eligible for PA reimbursement, so modify the scope of work with approval from HSEMD and FEMA to include the work to be performed whenever necessary. To ensure a smooth process, document everything and start right away, during the event if possible, depending on the event of course, and afterward to show the damage or work performed. Provide photos illustrating damages and impacts taken from different angles. To make it easy to show measurements, include scalable objects in the photo. Record GPS locations of damages or of where photos were taken from, and provide quantities with standard units where possible. That is, tons, square feet, cubic yards, etc. A tip: the most important thing is to provide clear documentation that the damage was a result of the disaster, that the facility was well maintained prior to the disaster, and that the work is needed to repair back to pre-disaster condition. Part of this is proving that the damage isn't the result of deferred maintenance, so be sure to collect maintenance documentation and images of the facility before the disaster, and after the repairs. Be sure to track actual costs for all disaster-related work. You'll most likely have multiple projects, so be sure to start documenting personnel and equipment time spent on each project in an easily trackable way. One tip: create a new account or fund for disaster-related expenses. Track each site's work and costs separately for easier cost reporting down the road, especially if projects get divided or combined later. For each project, you'll need timesheets or personal activity reports, invoices, including items taken from stock, equipment logs, mutual aid agreements or memoranda of understanding, contracts and any amendments, and proof of compliance with local and federal procurement rules. For instance, see Title II of the Code of Federal Regulations, Part 200, 2 CFR 200 for short. Again, make sure that you are able to easily identify all items needed for repairs for each and every one of your projects. If you plan to apply for management costs, known as Category Z or Cat Z, sufficient documentation will be needed. Cat Z consists of the costs that a subrecipient incurs in administering and managing PA awards. Cat Z costs are reimbursable to a maximum of 5% of the subrecipient's total award amount. Funding is released after closeout and after incurring the costs. Be sure to track all time spent actively managing your projects, such as attending exploratory calls or meetings, drafting responses to emails, site inspections, etc. Consistently document the time and date of each occurrence and the task that was completed during that time. Since Cat Z costs are closed up to 4 years after the event occurred, it is really easy to lose track of time spent and miss out on easily available funding. It is nearly impossible to try to compile the timesheets years after, so do yourself a favor and start tracking your time immediately and have it readily available upon request. If you haven't already learned how, have staff from FEMA or HSEMD teach you and your organization how to upload documents to Grants Portal. This allows you to take control of what documents are added to your projects and keeps control of projects in your hands. This is important because if a document is missing from Grants Portal, your organization could lose out on whatever that document provides. To help ensure that all the right documents were uploaded, Be sure to label files and documents in a way that can be easily identified by the multiple people on your team. Documentation is also important for appealing FEMA's decisions if necessary. You have the right to appeal any written decision from FEMA, but if you withdraw anything such as damages or projects, then FEMA wouldn't have to make a written decision on it, and you would have no opportunity to appeal later. If you do end up in a position where you don't agree with FEMA's decision, reach out to HSEMD and we will have an in-depth discussion to support your needs and provide insight while you craft your appeal. By now, you should have a solid understanding of the importance of documentation for public assistance grants and what kinds of information need to be included. Again, HSEMD is here to make your recovery go smoothly, so reach out if you need any help.